Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It is summertime and it is hot. And while I know a lot of people love camping in the summertime, one thing that I don't care for, and I honestly don't think most people care for, is trying to sleep in the heat or just being stuck in the heat all day with no way to escape from it. Maybe you're doing some backcountry camping, or maybe you're just at a campground that doesn't have power hookups. If that's the case, you're faced with the choice of putting up with the heat or finding a way to do something about it. So today I get to show you guys a really cool product. I recently received this from a company called Enjoycool. These folks sell an off-grid air conditioner that runs on a battery. Now, there's a lot of products like this out on the market right now, and they have a wide range of pricing and capabilities. You can spend a whole lot of money for an air conditioner to use when you go camping. When the folks at Enjoycool reached out to me, they wanted me to test the product, and I told them, look, I would love to test it, but I want to do a thorough test. I asked them for some extra time to do this video and to make sure that I was able to answer as many questions as possible with the video itself. I wanted to test it under different kinds of conditions and make sure that if I'm going to recommend this, that it's with absolute certainty that my audience is going to understand what its strengths and its weaknesses are. So first off, let me introduce you to the unit. This is the Enjoycool portable air conditioner. According to the company, this is a 2380 BTU air conditioning unit. The unit itself comes in at 14 pounds. And I think that's one of my favorite things about it. Look at this. This air conditioner is so lightweight and so easy to move around. Using the top handle that comes with this thing is ridiculously easy to tote. Measurements on it are 20 by 10 by 9 by 8. And it's a 240 watt unit with low power consumption. Now the unit itself sells separately from the battery, but they do offer a 1022 watt hour battery to go with this. Real quick before we go any further, let me show you what you get with the Enjoycool air conditioner. Of course, you get this big yellow sucker right here. You get 3 of these vent tubes. And as we go through this, I'm going to show you exactly what these are used for. You get front and rear attachments for those vent tubes. You get a condensation drain tube. You get a remote control. And you get a charging unit. There's also, and I don't remember if this came with the unit or if it comes with the battery, but there is a cable that attaches the air conditioner to the battery. Now the only connection you get is a 110 connection. To my understanding, there's not a 12 volt connection for this unit, so you can only run it off of 110 or off of the battery. So the battery also comes with its own handle, makes it a whole lot easier to move around. And it's a pretty simple attachment. All you gotta do is set the unit on top of the battery. You see this little connection point right here. Just pop it in place and twist it. Now it's locked together and the two can be lifted as a single unit. Now this does make it a lot heavier, but with the integrated handle at the top, it's still a whole lot easier to move around than most of these things. The unit itself is super simple to operate. You've got a power button, you've got a few other buttons on the front that we'll kind of go over a little bit, and it's really not all that technical. Now, a lot of these kind of units come with an app that allows you to access the device from your phone. This particular one does not. Basically, what you've got is the buttons on the front and the remote control. Now, in order to hook this unit up to power, we got to turn it around. There's a protective cover on the back here, and this is where we have to plug our power into. If we choose to use the battery, there's a plug down here that allows us to use the attachment to run power from the battery into the device. The way we do that is we just plug this in right here, push it all the way in, screw this piece on, do the same thing up here, plug it in, screw that on. We have to turn on our battery, so we're going to open the protective cover on the front. Push the button to turn on the power. Then all we do is up at the top, turn on our power, select how cool we want it, and let it fire up. And very quickly, we have cold air coming out. So before we go too much further with this, I wanted to do some very thorough testing with this device. You'll see the teardrop here. Once again, this was one of those things that this company reached out to me because they saw this in the background of my videos and thought that it would be a perfect way to test the device. So I'm going to test it with the camper. So the first test that I wanted to do was to go to a campground that has shore power. I wanted to be able to plug this thing in, let it go full blast all night long if necessary, and see if it was going to be able to keep up. Now it's been so hot around here that this thing was definitely going to get a run for its money. So I'm going to take you guys camping in Arkansas. We're going to hook this thing up and we're going to test and see how well it does in the teardrop camper. If this thing can't perform under ideal circumstances, there's gonna be no way I'm gonna be able to count on it when I'm running it off of a battery. I'm standing in the shade right now because it is so hot here. I've got full power electric capabilities. There is nothing that should interfere with this thing's ability to cool off the camper. And if it can't handle that, then how can I expect it to handle cooling the teardrop under less than ideal circumstances when I'm off grid? So we've got this little platform that I built specifically for this. I measured it out to as closely approximate the base of the air conditioner as possible. Let's get this thing put in, see what happens. So we are fully hooked up, and it took a grand total of about 2 minutes to get it all set up. Now that is accounting for the fact that I spent a lot of time over the last few days getting these vents put in. The installation itself was very fast. All the fittings seem to be solid. It doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart. All right, let's go turn this thing on and see what happens. So we are set up and ready to go. Let's turn this thing on and see if it's going to work. I may be in for the night. I haven't even had dinner yet, but if this thing works, I may just not leave the camper again tonight. So far so good. According to this, it's 95 degrees in here. We are going to kick this up to strong, which is going to give it its max cooling capabilities, which means it's also drawing maximum power. You can also adjust the fan speed, but I think max takes it all the way up to the top fan speed and cooling capability. Once it started working, that thing really got things cold. All night long, it was 66 degrees inside the teardrop. Even after the sun started to come up, even it was a little cloudy this morning, not as hot as it was yesterday, but I didn't start losing any temperature at all once the sun came out. So I think as far as a viable source of air conditioning for a small camper like this, ideal conditions, shore power available, all that kind of stuff, this is definitely doable. Now we have to check out what happens when we're running just on the battery. All right, so there you have it. So we tested it out for the first time under the ideal conditions. We had power, we had everything we needed to test its capabilities and make sure it was going to be able to work under those conditions. Now, there was a learning curve with this. I had a little bit of a problem with the exhaust, but that was my fault. Once I figured out where the problem was though, that thing worked like a charm. Perfectly comfortable all night long. No issues at all. For the second round of testing, I wanted to test it using only the battery. No shore power, no nothing. Charge up the battery, take it as is, hook it up. See, not only is it going to be able to comfortably cool this, but how long is it going to last? So let's go camping at another location and we're going to see, without any kind of power, is this going to be tolerable inside the camper? For the next stage of the test, our conditions are not as extreme as they were last time. We don't have the heat and the humidity that was just raging during the last test. That being said, however, it is warm and we are going completely off grid. So I think this gives us the opportunity of seeing if under milder conditions, if it's going to give us something that makes things much more comfortable. To be honest with you, I'm glad it's not scorching hot because I've got to sleep in here all night using only what's on the battery. Got everything hooked up earlier, we're ready to go. And when the sun goes just a little bit further down, I'm going to crawl in here and go to sleep for the night and see just how long this air conditioner is going to run, just on battery power. Fingers crossed, everybody. Let's hope this thing works out. Turn on the battery deck here. Turn on our power. See, it's 84 degrees in here right now. All right, so I'm going to leave this at 72. I'm not going to try to get it down super cold in here, simply because we're running on the battery and we need to see what we're capable of doing. We're up and running. Let's see what happens. It is 8:55 p.m. Got a couple movies on the iPad. We're going to sit back and watch them, see what happens before we go to sleep. Hopefully it will cool off a lot in here. So I just woke up. It is 2:23 a.m. The unit is still going, but it's entered into low battery mode. And in that mode, apparently, the compressor is no longer engaging. It has simply moved into a fan mode where it's just blowing air. So we got a little over 5 hours of cooling time on just the battery. All right, so as you can see, it did its job, but only for 5 hours. Now I know that when some people go camping, they don't sleep as much as they do at home. When I'm camping, I like to try to get some rest. It's one of the reasons I go camping. I want to rest. 5 hours in, this thing goes into low power mode. Now I've got warm, humid air circulating through the camper. Yes, I got 5 hours to sit in the camper, watch a movie, get some good sleep, but then that ended. If it's 85 degrees with 95% humidity, I am not going to be comfortable at that point. But the fact is, we know that it works. It will do the job. And while it's running, I'm pretty happy. I'm comfortable. Now, one of the things with products like this is in the advertising, you see a lot of pictures of these things in a big tent. Now, I have to say, I am skeptical that that is going to work at all. Simply because I know, having camped inside this camper, what this thing's capable of. It does not have the BTUs that's necessary to blow enough air into a large space like that to keep the whole place cool. Also, when you're dealing with tents, you've got a whole lot working against you. So I decided what I wanted to do is a test run in a tent. I wanted to set up one of my tents, one of my favorite tents to camp in, and see if this thing could make me comfortable in there. Now keep in mind, my favorite tent is relatively small. I've got a Camprite tent cot, and it's a 1.5 person size. So it's fairly large on the inside, but it's not gigantic. So if this thing can't keep up and keep me cool in that space, there's no way it's going to work for a big family-sized tent. So let's go hook this thing up. I'm going to show you how to hook it up in a tent because there are limitations when you're dealing with tent camping. So I'm going to show you how I hook this thing up, and then we're going to see if it's going to make that space comfortable and usable for a camping trip. Step one is that you're going to want to start with a small tent. You definitely do not want to try this in a giant tent. Step two is that you're going to want to put it in a shady spot. You want to be in the trees. You don't want to be in direct sunlight. The last thing in the world you want to do when you're dealing with something like a tent is fight the sun to control the temperature inside. This material here is only going to do so much to keep cool air in and hot air out, especially when the sun is beating directly down on top of it. Next, we're going to attach this vent clip onto the front. Going to put our tube in. Then we're going to open up just a little bit of a vent here at the bottom of the door. We'll bring our zippers around, stretch out our tube, and just put it inside. Close these around it. So we'll keep bugs out, and we're going to close the rest of it as well. Then we're going to turn it on. We're going to go for strong. We're going to really try to cool this thing down. All right, let's get inside because the mosquitoes are really becoming an issue. And down here we have an adjustable vent. We can point this in any direction we want it to go in. And we've got nice cool air coming in here. But now what we've got to determine is that going to be enough to cool this space and keep it relatively cool? So let's talk about a couple of the things that we're going to have to deal with here. One of those is the fact that for this setup, the air conditioner unit has to be located on the outside of the tent, which means we're not able to recirculate air from the inside, which is what helps kind of regulate the temperature and the consistency of the cooling power inside the space. Since all we're doing is we are pumping cold air in, there's nothing to recirculate that air, and there's not a way of getting a true reading of the temperature in here. So what's going to happen is, because that unit is outside, if you're running on battery power, it is going to run until it dies. It's going to run on whatever speed setting, whatever temperature setting you set it at, because of the fact that it does not have an accurate thermostat inside this space. Now, this will work a lot better if you're camping in a campground that has shore power, or if you've brought some kind of a solar generator or something like that with you. This is not the best environment for using this particular product. This is not going to cool a large tent. Now, the more layers this tent has, if this is a single layer tent, doesn't have a rain fly, has no insulation, then you're basically just pumping cold air into a warm space, and it's never really going to equal out very well. If you've got a multi-layered tent, if you've got an insulated tent, then you've got something to kind of hold on to it. But either way, it is going to take a little while to cool things off in this space. It's got to push out the warm air because it doesn't have a way of pulling that warm room air in and recirculating it as cold air. Now, another option that you have with this is if you're in a larger tent and you have one of these units, what you can do is run that vent hose inside your sleeping bag. This works great if you've got an insulated sleeping bag, something that's rated for cold temperatures. You put that hose, especially if you've got a zipper that can open in more than one direction, open a little gap like we did with that tent window, put that hose inside your sleeping bag and pump that air directly in there with you. If you don't have a zipper that works that way, you can put it at the top of the bed and run the hose down with you. It'll be uncomfortable because you're going to be snuggling up against a plastic hose, but at least it'll be pumping cool air in there. That honestly is the best use of something like this when you're tent camping. If you don't have any kind of insulated walls around you, insulate yourself inside your sleeping bag, pump that cold air directly in there with you, and you'll find yourself a lot more comfortable. It is starting to get much more comfortable in this space. I think that this would be comfortable for sleeping, but you also got to realize this is not a large tent. This is a one-person unit that I'm in right now. But when you get beyond that, when you start getting into the big tents, the 6 or 8 person tents, it's just too much space for this little thing to handle. It does not have the BTUs to be able to pump enough cold air in to combat the warm air that's constantly seeping in through the material over your head. But I think for this environment, this is going to be great. It's already considerably cooler in here than it was when I got in. It's very comfortable. I've got that vent blowing directly on me, and I've got no complaints about the temperature in this space right now. It's about 85 degrees outside. It's plenty warm out there, but for what I need, I think this is going to do the job. So there you have it when it comes to tent camping. Products like this, it's all about managing expectations. Not lowering your expectations, just managing them. Understand that there are limits to this thing. Usually the things they show in advertisement are not under the kind of conditions that you're going to be dealing with out in the field, and you're going to want to go into it understanding what it's going to take to use this thing optimally. The way this is going to work in a general outdoor setting, you're going to use this adapter. You're going to attach it to the front vent. You're going to attach one of your hoses. You're going to turn on your power, and then you're going to use this hose to direct the cool air where you need it. But that's the extent of what you're going to get. This thing is not going to blow out enough air to keep your entire body cold while you're sitting in the sun at the beach. Let's be realistic here. So here's my recommendation. If you're like me, if you've got a small teardrop camper or a small canned ham style camper, this will probably work pretty well for you. As long as you pick a shady camp spot, stay out of the direct sun, and don't expect too much out of this thing. You're not going to be able to come and go and slam the door and have the kids running in and out of the camper and expect this thing to be able to keep up. During the day, it's going to be a struggle. At night though, I think you're going to be able to get comfortable enough to get some sleep. Now, of course, the bigger your camper is, the less effective this is going to be. But here's the thing. If you've got a camper that has hot spots in it, maybe the kids are always complaining their bunk area is hot at night, get one of these to supplement the air conditioner you've already got. Add a little bit of extra cool in the places where you need it the most. There's a lot of things that this is capable of that you may not be thinking about. You may be looking at it going, that's just not going to be enough power. And it may not. You're not going to be able to take this little unit and expect it to fight against the heat of the sun in 100-degree weather. What this is going to do is it's going to mitigate that. It might help keep you from getting heat stroke, but it's not going to keep you ice cold. All right, so let's talk about some of the pros and cons, the things I like and don't like about this unit. Pros, of course, the size and weight of this thing. Being able to easily move it around, especially if it's not hooked up to the battery. If I'm running this on shore power, this thing's going to be super lightweight, easy to move around. It's easy to use, it's easy to control. Once you figure out what its limitations are and the best way to configure it for your needs, this thing's going to do a good job for you. Now let's talk about some of the cons, because there are a few. The first one, of course, is the short battery life. I would gladly add a little bit of weight and space to that battery pack to get a couple more hours out of it. If I can't get at least 7 to 8 hours out of the battery, it's not the most useful thing to me. I would love to see them come out with either a supplement battery pack or something like that. Now I do have a relatively higher end solar generator that I can use with this. I can set that up to charge this unit, or I can use it to run during the night, and it'll provide a lot more power than that little battery can. Another one of the things that I don't care for is the cable attachments on this thing. There is such a limited space to get into to have to twist that little knob that's on there that it's hard to get your fingers in there. If you've got big fingers, you're gonna struggle with this thing. And in order to make sure you've got a good secure connection, you have to snap it in place and then twist that on there. But there is such limited access space when it comes to both areas where you want to screw that in. I'd like to see that opened up a little bit, or at least have some kind of little extension or wings on that nut so that I've got something else to grab hold of. The one design flaw that really just bothers me is this setup right here. The inability to plug the battery into the wall while the battery is plugged into the unit. To me, that's extremely inconvenient. And here's the reason why. If I'm running this on the battery and the battery dies in the middle of the night, and I decide I want to plug this into some other device like solar generator, or if I have a 110 outlet in my camper, then I have to completely disconnect all of this in order to plug this thing in. Now, I don't know if you noticed the arrangement that I've got in my camper, but where this thing sits, this is not easy access in the middle of the night in my camper. So having an extra plug on the back of the battery that will allow me to plug this in right here, and then still have the battery plugged into the unit, that right there to me would be a game changer. That is the biggest complaint that I have about this unit. The fact that I can't have both plugged in at the same time really bothers me. My other off-grid air conditioner, I'm not going to mention the name because it's a competitor, has the ability to do that. I can plug both in at the same time. So I don't think it's asking too much to try to do that with this design. Now, what do I like about this over the other unit that I've got? This is infinitely lighter weight and smaller and easier to move around than the other one. My other unit is too big for me to use in the interior space of the teardrop. I have to set it up out here, which, as I pointed out when we were tent camping, means I don't have the air from that interior space being recycled through it. I also don't have an accurate thermostat for that thing to know what the temperature is inside. It only knows what temperature air I want it to blow, but it's not going to know when we get there. But Enjoycool, if you could fix that issue, that alone would be a huge improvement on this design. All right, so my overall assessment, I like the Enjoycool air conditioner. For my needs, it works. Using it in this little teardrop camper, it's gonna give me the air conditioning I need. If I'm camping someplace with power, I'm always gonna have air conditioning. If I'm camping someplace without power, it's gonna give me about 5 hours of good, peaceful sleep. As far as trying to use it in a tent, anything bigger than that little Camprite tent cot that I've got, I don't think I'd even try it. I think it would be a waste of energy and a waste of effort to try to take it along for that. Unless you're just going to hook it up into your sleeping bag, and in that case, that's fine. That's going to be an efficient use of the device. But trying to cool the inside of a giant tent, you're wasting your time. Now, the folks at Enjoycool have given me a discount code in the event that you want to go check it out, see how much this thing is with my discount, and they would love to hear from you. I'm sure I still have not answered every question people are going to have about this. So if you have a question about it, feel free to drop it in the comment section below. I may or may not be able to answer it, but I will do my best to find out. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this one. And until the next one, prepare for the world that you live in, not the one you wish existed. And we'll see you around.